Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Mystical Realms podcast with me, LauraRedWitch. I hope you're all really well, and in this episode we're going to be looking at one of my favourite things, and that is the sacred life of trees. Now, I think everyone loves trees, don't they? I don't know anyone that doesn't enjoy the company of trees, walking in the woods, or just sitting by a beautiful oak on a summer's day. It's not just for the hippie types and the pagans amongst us. It is also for the mathematicians who may be obsessed with the rings and the aging of the trees and the spiral and the numerology of the trees. It could be for the biologists and the people interested in how trees grow and their depth and connections with each other. I love the fact that almost every week there's an article put out where you see more about how trees really do connect with each other and they talk to each other. Basically everything that we kind of already knew in our hearts and souls that is slowly being brought to the surface by science. And that's great. I love it that maybe as time goes on, spiritual knowing and deep connection with the world and science may start to walk together hand in hand that little bit more. But it's true, whatever you're into, trees do hold this mythological, powerful, wonderful spell on us. Maybe it's because they are so large, so old. You know, the yews can be thousands of years old, and oaks maybe not so far behind, with them being a good few hundred years. As I mentioned last week, we've got Gog and Magog in Glastonbury, and even though they're not, well, doing so amazing health-wise, they're most likely, very, 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 very old indeed. I put it to around 1,000, but, who knows. And we've got the Sherwood Oak in Nottingham Forest, famous of Robin Hood. Again, an ancient oak. And these ancient trees become a central point for myth, for story, for people to gather around and to feel this place of centeredness. And this really interests me. Since the beginning of humanity, the tree has become a symbol for us. Well, no wonder, really. They are much older than us. What I love about trees is several zillion things, but where I'll start is that they have this calm sense of being. And we're like scuttling insects running around getting stressed about things that really possibly don't have that much meaning, or are transient, or are products of our own strange civilization. And trees simply are there in their slow, deep and powerful way, and they hold us for a while if we let them, and they impart their calm on us, their wisdom and their strength. Leaning on certain trees, maybe like oaks for example, gives that sense of strength. Oaks are seen as the father tree, the king of the woods. They have a very masculine energy in that divine masculine way, and being with them feels supportive, feels a little bit like you can just rest upon their barks and maybe be imbued with a sense of their wisdom and strength. And perhaps we can get on with our days feeling a little bit more calm and maybe having that sense of kingship over our lives, or that sense of connection and family and deep roots. Trees like the beech, the beautiful smooth bark of the beech, and her lovely roots that appear above the ground, for me have a much more feminine feel. That's like the oak would be the god, the masculine energy, or the divine masculine, or however you want to see it, the king, and the beech would be the queen, the goddess, her serpentine spiraling up to the heavens. And we can sit on the beach. Not the beach, just the beach with the sea. I mean the beech tree. We can sit by the beach, snuggled into the smooth warmth of her bark, and feel comforted. These are the experiences that I've had. Oak leaning against him brings me strength, and beech leaning into her warmth brings me that sense of being mothered in a nice way, being that sense of it's It's all going to be okay. We just need to sit here for a bit, take some time and relax. And then we have trees like the birch. Ah, the beautiful fairy birch. The shining white and silver bark that inspires grace and fairy energy and that otherworldly feel. The delicate and graceful trunk and branches swaying with their really light and papery leaves. The sound of the birch brings poetry to the mind. And I've had lots of fairy experiences with birch trees, and they also have this youthful energy to them as well. And that's not just because they look bright and slender. And again, the birch is called the Lady of the Woods. It's because also they grow very fast. If an area of woodland or if land has been cut down and turned into something else and been left, it will be the birch that grows fastest and repopulates the area, maybe by train lines or abandoned areas. And the birch does grow fast and shining. And that's why, one of the reasons why in the Ogham, this is something we will talk a lot more about, but maybe we won't go into the full Ogham experience today. I think the Ogham should be its own podcast. But in the Ogham, the Celtic and Irish tree alphabet, which has become a calendar, the birch is the first tree of the calendar because of its initiatory and beginnings energy and the youthfulness as well. But I digress. I was talking about centering and grounding with trees, and this is what I wanted to talk about, that when you're with the trees you feel centered and grounded. And trees have always been central features of villages, of temples, and of myth. As I mentioned, the world tree is something that all ancestral cultures in their own different ways have venerated, have had in their culture and their story. And it's easy to see why. When we look at the trees, again, often so much older than us, so much calmer than us, and bring so much life as well. Obviously, they support life, they bear nuts and fruits, and they are used, obviously, we can use the wood and build from the trees as well. But their roots dive deep into the earth. Their roots pull on the nutrition and the energy of the deep, and that's inspiring for us. So their roots go into the land where we can't see, maybe the places where we feel that our ancestors are. And in lots of cultures, the underworld, the lower world, is a place of the ancestors and is a place of power where we too can find our own empowerment and sovereignty and our own healing. In shamanic journeying, when we venture to the lower world, it is often, not always, but often through trees or through hollow tree roots, in our visualizations, in our drum journeys. And the lower world is a place of power animals. It's a place of wild nature and finding the totems that are going to bring us healing and power. And this is something that has a global energy and something that everyone can relate to, even if they haven't journeyed. Though I do recommend giving it a go, either doing it in a class or in a workshop or finding out more about it. Whatever your spiritual path, it can be really wow. The first time I did a shamanic journey and journey to the lower world was absolutely empowering and amazing and wonderful and real in its own way, which is a very real way. But anyway, Laura, come back to the topic. You're getting carried away. There's no surprise there because there's just so much to talk about. But the roots of the earth going to the underworld, going to the lower world, gaining wisdom from those places we can't see, our own unconscious, our own deep places, places of soul, places of dream. The trunk of the tree is our world and can help us bring strength to our world. So the roots represent the ancestors, maybe the past or the deep, the unconscious. Then we have the trunk, which is something that gives us strength, maybe shows us something about perseverance in the storms, how to grow, how to be strong, supportive, kind, so many different things. And then we go to the branches and the leaves, which spiral and reach up to the heavens, to the divine above, to our aspirations, to the gods. So many symbols come from the tree, and many spiritualities and many religions have the three worlds linked to the tree and linked to their own spiritual path. So 3 is often a very sacred number, and it is in Christianity as well. But the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world are 3 constants in spiritual practice and shamanic experience. And in common sense, really, we have below, we have here, we have above. And the tree, the sacred tree, in all its mythological strength and larger-than-life character, its grandeur and hopeful energy as new sprouts come from old decaying energy, are symbols of all the realms and also of the rebirth and the symbols that come with that. So after the winter and all the leaves go and everything feels dark and sparse, there is the spring, and new life comes again, and new greenery sprouts from the dark. And also, trees that often seem to be a little bit dead, fallen, maybe hit by thunderstorms and lightning, will often then sprout new greenery. So it's a symbol of hope and regeneration, the next level of life coming through. So of course we have the 3 realms, popular and common in most tree lore. And we also have in Norse mythology the 9 worlds in one tree. So you have I'm sure you already know, the ash tree, the world tree, is called Yggdrasil. And it was this tree which Odin suspended himself upon, hung himself on for 9 days and 9 nights, upside down, and received the wisdom of the runes at the end of it. So he made a sacrifice to himself and gained the wisdom of the runes. And the 9 realms of all the beings, from the gods and the different levels of gods and the elves and the giants and humans, they exist on the 3 levels, so above, middle world, and below. And these realms are all meant to be connected to the 9 roots of Yggdrasil. You also have one very famous story around trees, and that is the Garden of Eden. And the Garden of Eden with the sacred 2 trees, which got humans into that little bit of trouble. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And the serpent, a symbol of the goddess, a symbol of life and rebirth, and wisdom, huge symbol of wisdom and regeneration, ancient symbol, not of evil, can I just say. There's not many, many cultures that see the serpent as purely evil. They often see them as wise, powerful, respected, revered symbols of the goddess, of life, of death, of shedding the old and being reborn to the new. Anyway, that's another story. But yes, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge are the 2 trees of human creation and the fall of humanity. In Egyptian mythology, we have the sycamore that's sacred to the ancient Egyptians, and the twin sycamores are the gates of heaven in Egyptian mythology. So we have so many trees. I mean, if I list all the trees of the world, we'd be going on for ages. And I do want to do many of these videos, podcasts about sacred trees, talking of videos. I do have a fair few videos on my YouTube channel about the trees, so you can obviously go and have a little look at them there. And I do intend to do more, because the more I get older, the more wisdom and passion I have and stories I have to tell about the trees. So I would like to do more videos on the trees as well. But the trees have been central to human mythology, spirituality, and key to their consciousness for basically as long as humans have been able to grasp some concepts of life and spirituality. And I want to read from a book about how people can with trees. There's a lovely book. It's called The Forest in Folklore and Mythology, and it's by Alexander Porteous. And there's lots of lovely, it's quite an old book, it's been reprinted. But I wanted to just quote from this book about how people have connected with trees and kind of the history of the life of trees. So, as the millenniums passed, other epochs of time held their sway, until, at the close of the glacial periods, forests as we now know them covered the land. And apart from their utilitarian purposes, a very wealth of romance lies hidden within their bosky depths. There, the voice of nature speaks to the weary wayfarer, the rustling and whispering of the leaves, the sad yet sweet cooing of pigeons, the melody of songbirds, or the distant cawing of rooks, the hum of innumerable insects, all impart a feeling of rest, and the strife and jealousies of the world seem far removed. Here in the sunny glades of the forest, the ground is carpeted with mosses and flowers, while all around the view is bounded by gigantic trunks of trees, each clad with many-coloured lichens, and the whole canopied with leafy boughs, whence the feathered orchestra of the woods pour forth their divine melody. So that was nice. It's a lovely book, this, and it has lots of kind of poetic discussions about the forests, but also a great research book about the forest as well, and about the groves and folklore. But yeah, as we have been discussing, we're going from the world trees, the axis mundi of life, to how we today just get so much healing and rest from being in the trees. So from the oak groves of the Druids and of Zeus, I can go in so many different directions, I must calm myself down, but the oak groves of the Druids and the oak groves of the ancient Grecians are places of divine worship. So after we go from the symbol of a tree being the centre of the universe, or the axis mundi of life, or the sacred focal point, we go to the idea of groves of trees being places for people to gather, places for people to worship. I think people started off maybe on mountains and these places, but actually found that connecting with the trees was maybe easier, or a place which brought healing and soothing energy as well as connection with the divine. So oaks were sacred to the Druids, hugely, massively. When we look at Celtic folklore, we're looking at oaks and yews as being the two main trees. Of course, all the trees are important, but a lot of the folklore is built around the oaks and the yews as an immortal energy, a tree of life, of death, of rebirth, and ancient wisdom. And possibly because those two are the oldest, the trees that live for a long, long, long time, they are sacred particularly to the Celts. And the Druids would have gathered in oak groves for their worship, and to get the wisdom, to gain the wisdom from the trees. The oaks it's not just a place to hang out, though it's always nice to hang out in oak groves. It's a place to listen to what the gods, what the deities are saying, what the spirits of the trees are speaking. And that would have been through the whispers in the leaves. That would have been through the creaking of the bark and of the branches, and the faces that appear in the trees, bringing messages. And of course, that would have been through the lightning striking the oak, because oak trees get hit a lot by lightning. They're the least resistant to thunderstorms and to lightning. So the blasted oak is a big thing. I will do a separate podcast about the oak because the oak is a huge love of mine, and there's so much to say about them. But they would have gathered there, and can you just imagine yourself in the situation of being in this oak grove hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, lit by torchlight as the sun sets and the moon rises, and the clouds pour over, and there's a rumbling of a storm, and the rain is pouring down, and in the distance, hopefully not too close, suddenly a crack, a spark of light, and suddenly there's flames all around as an ancient oak is hit by lightning. Now, wouldn't you think that was a mighty sign from the gods, if ever there was one, a symbol to be interpreted, and to feel that you have that really radical connection to nature, to the divine, and giving that real direct message. But even without that drama of the fires and the lightning strikes, we would have the strong wisdom of the connection to the oaks, and the listening to the sounds, the birds and the leaves and the messages brought through, and to take on the energy of the spirits of the trees. Of course, Zeus also, it wasn't just in the Celtic lands that the oaks were revered, it was also in Greek, as mentioned, and Zeus had oak groves that were sacred to him, and he is a god of lightning, amongst other things, a big father god. So these places would have been a place of prophecy and for an oracle, and for connecting with Zeus, the great father himself. Ash groves were sacred to Apollo, and the myrtle sacred to Aphrodite. So there's plenty of each sort of tree group would have a different energy that would connect different people and different cultures to the spiritual aspect of that tree. So the hawthorn is really very fey, and the hawthorn is connected. Hawthorn in the Ogham. Again, I'm going off on the Ogham side, but the hawthorn is called Huath, and potentially linked to Hathor as well. But the hawthorn is a fairy tree, and no mistake. No mistake. And so being amongst groves of hawthorn can bring connection with the fairy realm. Though, to be fair, each tree has its own spirit, its own energy. Maybe you can call it a dryad, whatever you want to call. Each of the trees have their own spirits. The gnomes of the earth, the elves of the birch trees, and so on and so forth. So there's many tales, which again we will talk about another week, about the spirits of the trees and the elementals and the fairies of the trees, and how people have connected with them over time. And back to the Ogham just for a second. I love the Ogham. If you don't know anything about it, there's lots of great books out there, but we will talk more about the Ogham as well. But in the Ogham calendar and alphabet, oak is called Dur, D-U-I-R, and I think a few places in Ireland have Dur as part of the name, so it's very important. But Dur means door, obviously, so the word door comes from Dur, and that means doorway. And I love that the oak is a doorway, between the worlds, a doorway to new consciousness, to new understanding, and a doorway, a strong and powerful doorway. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And we are going into time of the oak at the moment, so I know the Ogham calendar is a bit of a kind of debated topic on the reality of it, and really the dates with the Ogham calendar should possibly go with the lunar cycle, but we got to work with what we've got to work with, and I kind of enjoy going through the tree months as well. We'll go through it a little bit more another time, but June the 10th to July the 7th is the time of the oak, is a time of Dur. So we're going into that time very shortly, in a few days. And so we can look at the summer solstice is the time of the oak tree. And there is the battle between the oak and the holly at the summer solstice. These guys fight every blooming 6 months. They fight at the summer solstice and they fight at the winter solstice. And it's symbolic of the light side of the year, the king of the light side of the year, which is the oak tree, Dieu, and the holly tree, the king of the dark side of the year, Tinny. Probably pronounced differently, actually, in Gaelic. I do apologise for my pronunciation. I think it's Chinny or Tinny. I don't know. I need to improve on my Gaelic, obviously. But you have Dieu and Tinny, the oak and the holly, fighting at the summer solstice. So the oak is the king of the bright side of the year, and therefore, unfortunately, he is going to lose at the summer solstice fight. But that's okay. I love hollies too. Holly trees are amazing, and I've had lots of amazing experiences with holly trees as well. But the holly tree wins the fight at the summer solstice and therefore rules the waning part of the year. Now, I know that's quite depressing to think that we've got the waning part of the year kind of coming in a few weeks' time, but it's about the sun's power. And even though it may not be the height of our own summer, midsummer is about the longest day. We mentioned this on the first week's podcast, didn't we? That the summer solstice is the longest day and the sun's strongest, longest time. And after the summer solstice, on the 21st, and it's often between the 21st and 23rd of June, 21st to 24th of June, after the summer solstice, the sun's power slowly starts to wane. And also you see it in nature. May and June is the greening. It is the lush greenery of the land. I just love this time of year because of the life in the trees and the leaves. It's so lush and green from Beltane to the solstice. It's just a lush fest of gorgeous greens. And that continues, but you see something quite noticeable. Going from the summer solstice onwards, say by July, definitely by August, that greening is fading. The leaves lose some of that vitality, obviously preparing very slowly for their fall in September, October, November. But yeah, you start to sort of see that in July, that even though everything's beautiful still and green and lovely, that it's not got the same vibrancy as May and June. And yes, that's a turning point. It is the waning half of the year from the midsummer solstice onwards. Except the holly. Nah, the holly, I know I always call holly a she, but obviously we're talking about this fight between the holly king and the oak king. But the holly, she's as green can be. She's almost vibranter. That's more vibrant, might be a better way of saying it. She's more vibrant. That green life force is just beautiful. And she is the green one, the strong one, full of vitality and life, while the rest of the trees are kind of taking a chill. So you can see why the holly is the king of the waning part of the year, the darker part of the year. And again, of course, they'll fight again, have a good old scrap at the winter solstice, and then the oak will win as life starts to slowly return to the world. So that's some of the tree lore. We will go into more about the Ogham as well, and more about the different trees for different months, because I love this kind of thing. It makes me happy. And I also love the fact that we all have our own personal birth tree as well. If that interests you, I will go through that another week for you guys, if you want to find out your birth tree. I do just like it. It brings something more personal and tangible to connect with, your tree, basically. So that's something I really enjoy learning about and discussing as well. So we've been through a nice journey so far. I'm trying to kind of keep this focused because I could possibly talk about trees for a long time and go off in different tangents. We've touched upon the world tree, the axis mundi, the centre of the world, and also centre of communities as well. People would have had a central tree, and how sacred that must be to have that central tree that your community connects with. It's just really lovely. And maybe you have one, a tree that is your sacred tree, somewhere that you go that's your tree, that has a story for you, that has a place that in your heart that you go and sit with when you feel a bit low, when you feel a bit exhausted, when you just want to chill out and relax. Everywhere I go, I always seem to find a tree that becomes my hangout tree, and also one that I just want to lean against for a while and not tell them my problems, because the tree might be like, oh, God's sake, shut up, Laura. But to just be with and to let go of the need to be human with your human stuff and just be, and be your soul essence with that tree. It can often be an oak tree. For me, when I was living in London and in Hampstead Heath, frog tree would be my tree. And I do recall frog tree, and when I visit London, I hopefully try and see frog tree. Frog tree is an oak tree, but this is what I love, how the spirits of the tree, the energy creates some kind of impression or image in the faces on the tree. And there was this 3D kind of frog face coming out of this oak. It was very clear. It's not like it's a subtle thing. It was quite easy to spot. So when I used to go running. I used to go running a lot on Hampstead Heath and walking with my friends on Hampstead Heath. And oak tree would be somewhere I'd just stop and have a break and have a rest and just give him a hug and stand by him for a while and just be in connection with what I feel is the more masculine energy, but the more fatherly energy of the oak, and getting some good guidance that as I'm running around like a nutter and doing all this stuff, the oak tree's there, that frog tree's there, and maybe hopefully if I go back to London again soon, frog tree will still be there, and I'll be able to reconnect almost 6 years after leaving. And that's powerful, I feel, for me anyway. And hopefully you guys have a tree or a grove or several trees. I know I have several trees. Wherever I go, there's several trees that become my buddies and that I just love, and that become a part of your heart and your own myth, your own stories. And now I have an amazing oak that's on my way to my supermarket shop. So I walk to the supermarket if I can, carry all the stuff and don't go in the car and be lazy. I walk to the supermarket and there is this stunning oak. He is just majestic and magnificent. And I spend time leaning against that oak and gain inspiration and gain that sense of connection to something that's more, bigger. Those things are bigger than me, but that are bigger than me, more powerful and more strong and still yet full of life. And it's just wonderful. So yeah, we all have different trees, and there's lots of yew trees that I love connecting with, and I'm sure we all have favourite trees that we go to. What I would encourage is to spend more time with them. I never regret time spent with trees. It's never wasted. I think when I look back over life, the time spent with trees will always be time well spent. Time healing the soul and finding inspiration and connecting with the ancient wisdom and wonder of the tree world. So, yeah, basically, go hug a tree, guys. But seriously, gaining a personal connection with trees, feeling the healing within the woods is one of the most magnificent things there can be. And I just wish trees were more protected. It's heartbreaking to see deforestation and to see people connecting with trees and then to see them gone. For what, really? For what? And I'm all for replanting trees, obviously, but you can't replace the wisdom and the stories of the trees and the homes that nature makes in the trees. That cannot be replaced as easily. So being in the woods is, I think, one of the most spiritual, powerful, healing and humanizing, is that a word? I've made it, a sense of, it makes us be real humans, be in the moment, listening to the pulsing ebb and flow of life, to the bird song, being aware and in tune of the shifting seasons. It is just what it's all about. And if you're so inclined, to connect with the spirits of the wood, to feel the presence of the life force within the trees, the specific spirits and beings that live in the trees. And even scientists catching up that trees like to have a hug and connect with each other. There are beings, there are energies, there are life forces in the trees, just as there are within you and within me. So my encouragement for this week is to spend time with the trees. Maybe make a friend with a new tree, or go back to an old tree friend and reconnect with them again. As you're walking through the woodlands, breathe in that lovely air that they're supplying you with as they breathe out something that we can breathe in, this amazing relationship. Be aware of the seasonal changes. Be aware as life goes towards that midsummer point, how pulsing and gorgeous it is. And just see, if we go to places fairly regularly, the slow shifts and how life changes and flows. It's just wonderful to be very connected to that, and it can be very healing and inspiring for us as well. So go befriend a tree, go gain the wisdom of a mighty oak, a beech, a birch, an alder, an elder. Pick the fruits, learn the wisdom, and be empowered and healed by the ancient energy of the trees, just like our ancestors were. I hope you've enjoyed this foray into the woodlands, and I hope it's encouraged you to find your own tree of life, your own sacred tree, to connect with the deep roots, to be strong and standing tall in this life as we reach and aspire to the heavens above. I'll see you all next week. Well, I'll talk to you all next week. Have a wonderful time. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I am going to hopefully bring one out every week, so do stay tuned, and talk to you all soon. Have a really great day, a really great week. Much love.